Okay, so ready to jump in. Today, we're going deep on something I think a lot of us are wrestling with these days: how to navigate the modern work world.
Yeah, it's a whole new landscape, isn't it?
It really is. And we've got this super interesting conversation to dig into between Sarah and John from their channel. And you know what we're all about here right now?
Actionable insights for you, the learner.
Exactly. No fluff. Just those straight to the point aha moments that actually help you level up.
And this source, I think it's gold because you're getting two voices, both in the digital world, but with different angles.
Great. So we've got Sarah. She's built her own online business from scratch.
Bootstrapped it, the whole 9 yards. And then John, he's a digital marketing pro strategist, been in the game a while.
Seasoned, yeah. And they've both lived through these big shifts in how we work.
Oh, yeah. And they're not just talking theory. They're giving grounded advice from the trenches.
So in their conversation, they really went there. They talked work-life balance, especially in this remote first world.
Which, let's be honest, a lot of us are still figuring out.
Big time. And then how technology, AI especially, is changing our roles.
Automating things, yeah.
And why it's so crucial to keep learning, keep growing, not just a nice to have anymore.
It's the name of the game now.
Right. So we're going to unpack their whole conversation, pull out the key takeaways, how to stay productive, avoid burnout, adapt to all this crazy change.
And, become the best versions of ourselves professionally.
That's the goal. So where do we even start with all this?
Well, the shift to remote work, that's got to be square one, right?
Okay.
It's something John talked about, and it's a story a lot of us have lived. That initial, honeymoon phase?
Oh, yeah.
No more commute, more time with the family?
Working in your PJs.
Right.
Freedom.
It sounds so idyllic.
It does. But as John pointed out, and we've probably all felt this, that initial excitement can wear off. And then the real challenges hit you.
Yeah.
Especially setting boundaries, When your home is your office, it can get blurry.
Blurry is an understatement. It's a tough balancing act, for sure. And then you bring in Sarah's perspective. She's an online business owner, right?
So she's living at times 10.
Exactly. For her, it's not just about physical space, it's mental, too.
That's so true.
How do you switch off when your business is, intertwined with your whole life and your online presence?
Always another email, always another notification.
Always on, yeah.
It's exhausting. So takeaway number one for you listening is this.
Remote work is awesome, don't get me wrong, but
to really make it work, to have that work-life balance everyone's after,
you got to be intentional.
you got to put in the effort consistently to set those boundaries and stick to them.
It's not about the where, it's about the how.
It's about the mindset, the strategies you use. Okay, so let's talk strategies. What did they actually recommend?
Well, John had some solid advice. He was big on having a designated work zone.
Even if it's just a corner of a room, right?
Yeah, but it's more than just having a desk. It's about sending your brain a signal. Okay, I'm here, it's work time.
Yeah, like a mental on-off switch.
Exactly. And then, just as important, at the end of the day, you get up, you leave that zone.
You physically walk away.
That's the cue to switch off, at least mentally.
Yeah.
He also talked a lot about structured breaks throughout the day.
So not just powering through for hours on end?
Nope. Short breaks, he said, those actually boost productivity in the long run.
Interesting.
Think about it. Our brains aren't meant to focus nonstop. We need those little pauses to recover mentally.
Makes sense.
And then, John was really adamant about this. Weekends are for family, period.
No work allowed.
Unplug completely. That's how you truly recharge.
And Sarah totally agreed on the physical boundaries thing.
Yeah, which just shows you how fundamental it is.
No matter what kind of work you do.
Corporate, remote, entrepreneur, whatever.
So for you out there, takeaway number 2.
These strategies, the workspace, the breaks, the protected personal time.
They're not just suggestions, they're non-negotiables.
If you want to be productive and honestly just sane in the long run.
For real. Okay, let's get real about something else. Burnout.
Oof, yeah.
John talked about this, and I think it resonated with a lot of people.
He described that feeling of, losing your passion.
It's going through the motions.
Yeah,
And it's not just being tired, it's deeper than that.
it's exhaustion, but on a whole other level, mentally, emotionally.
Yeah, like you're depleted. And he had to consciously force himself to take a step back, put self-care first.
Otherwise, you just keep spiraling.
Exactly. Sarah, too, she talked about feeling drained emotionally and physically.
And that's the thing about burnout. It can creep up on you even when you love what you do.
So insidious. So what did they do to get out of that rut?
Well, John was all about disconnecting, truly disconnecting.
So doing things that have zero to do with work.
Yep. And he said spending time with loved ones, just being present with them was super restorative.
Oh, I love that.
Also, mindfulness, meditation.
Those practices are so powerful.
Sarah, too, she said even short meditation breaks throughout the day made a difference.
Any little bit helps. And then for her, exercise was a big one.
Her reset button, she called it.
I can relate to that. John agreed about exercise, too. Even a quick walk can change your whole mood.
It's amazing how much that can help.
So, big takeaway here, number 3.
Pay attention to the signs of burnout early. That cynicism creeping in.
The lack of excitement.
Don't wait till you're totally fried.
Yeah, and build in those disconnecting activities, those self-care rituals.
It's not selfish, it's preventative.
It's an investment in yourself, really.
Now, beyond just preventing the bad, they also talked about actively bringing in the good.
The fun stuff.
Hobbies.
Hobbies. Sarah loves to travel, and lately she's been getting into cooking.
I love that. Exploring new things.
Then John's a photographer.
Okay.
He shoots landscapes, cityscapes.
Capturing all those vibes. And he's even learning guitar.
How cool is that?
So awesome.
Sarah also got into gardening during the pandemic.
There's something
What?
so grounding about that, right?
Totally. Being in nature, seeing things grow.
Especially when so much of our work is in the digital ether.
So for all of you listening, takeaway number 4.
Make time for those things you love, those things that have nothing to do with your job.
It's not just about filling time, it's about refilling your energy.
It sparks creativity, helps you see things differently.
So important. Okay, let's talk about the future of work.
Ooh, the crystal ball.
John thinks remote work is here to stay, which, duh, right?
Yeah, no going back now.
But he thinks hybrid is going to be the dominant model.
Makes sense. People want that flexibility.
But they also miss that in-person connection.
The collaboration, the spontaneous brainstorming,
Right, and just the social aspect.
water cooler talk, office gossip.
All of it. And Sarah agreed that hybrid's probably the future.
So it's not one or the other. It's finding that sweet spot.
The best of both worlds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for you, the learner, expect things to keep changing.
Flexibility is going to be key.
Be ready to adapt to different ways of working.
Remote, in-office, hybrid, the whole shebang. Now let's talk tech. AI specifically.
The elephant in the room?
John, being in digital marketing, he had some interesting thoughts.
Yeah, he sees AI as this powerful tool, especially for automating stuff,
Like data analysis, targeting.
even some content creation.
Wow.
But he was also really clear, AI is a tool, not a replacement,
It can't do everything.
especially those uniquely human things.
Like creativity, strategy, building relationships.
Those are still crucial, especially in areas like branding, customer engagement.
The human touch. Sarah agreed with that.
She said AI can handle the grunt work, but the human element is irreplaceable.
It's a partnership,
Exactly. So for you listening, remember, AI is a powerful assistant.
but it can't replace your own ingenuity and your ability to connect with people.
Don't underestimate those things.
Okay. Last but not least, they talked about something that's so crucial in our digital world. Networking.
It's more than just schmoozing, right?
Way more.
Sarah made a really good point.
She said it's not just about climbing the ladder. It's about learning, finding support, connecting with people who get it.
Who speak your language?
Yeah. John's own experiences really prove that.
He talked about how many opportunities came from those connections.
Just from building relationships.
Yeah, it's about the give and take, the mutual support. So key takeaway here,
Build those connections in your field.
authentic relationships,
Yeah.
not just LinkedIn contacts.
Because those connections, they can lead to learning, mentorship, maybe even your dream job.
You never know.
Okay, final thing, and this is huge. Continuous learning, personal growth.
Never stop learning.
John, he's all about it.
Online courses, books, webinars.
He's always soaking up new knowledge.
And he said it's not just about taking it in, it's about reflecting on it.
How does this fit into my goals?
Am I on the right track?
And adjusting course if needed.
Exactly.
Sarah added that personal growth is a journey. You got to be open to new things, but also stay true to yourself.
It's a balancing act.
It really is.
So for all of you, final takeaway.
Learning, self-assessment, they're not just good ideas, they're essential.
If you want to thrive in this crazy world, both in your career and in your life,
So true. So let's recap. In this deep dive, we covered
work-life balance, especially in this remote world,
how to spot burnout before it gets you,
the power of hobbies, don't underestimate those.
the future of work, likely hybrid,
AI, it's a tool, not a takeover.
the importance of real networking.
And of course, never stop learning, never stop growing.
We went deep, y'all, and hopefully by hearing about Sarah and John's experiences.
You got some solid takeaways, some food for thought,
Things to apply to your own journey, whatever that looks like.
your own unique path.
Exactly.
And on that note,
Think about this.
with everything changing so fast,
The world of work, the tech.
what's one skill, one area of knowledge as the basis for today? And our mission, I guess you could call it, is to help you guys pull out some actionable stuff, some key insights. We want to paint a clear picture of the big changes happening both professionally and personally. Think of it as like your cheat sheet to navigating your own career and development in this crazy fast world we live in.
Love that, a cheat sheet. I think that's exactly what people need right now, cutting through the noise and getting to what really matters.
Exactly. So first things first, let's tackle this big question that kept coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Is the traditional 9 to 5, that classic workday,
Mm-hmm.
is it on its way out?
It's morphing, that's for sure. Maybe not disappearing entirely. But the shift is happening.
Oh, yeah, I can feel it.
We're seeing more and more remote work, people wanting flexible schedules, and, even the rise of these project-based roles. There's this real hunger for autonomy. People want more control over their time. And honestly, a lot of companies are realizing that a more adaptable workforce is actually a good thing for them too.
Yeah, it's like everyone wins. So we've got this move towards remote work, and then what about this whole hybrid thing? That seems to be the, what do you call it? The middle ground, right?
Yeah, totally. It's trying to strike that balance, between flexibility and still having some face time, some connection with colleagues.
Right, because you don't want to lose that entirely.
Exactly. But this whole shift, it presents some interesting challenges.
I bet.
Like on the company side, how do you keep that team spirit alive? Maintain the culture, keep communication clear when everyone's not in the same room.
Right, because those things can slip away pretty easily.
They can. And then for the employees, well, it demands a whole different set of skills, right?
Yeah.
Being able to manage yourself, stay focused. You have to be more intentional about how you work.
It's like a whole new ball game.
Yeah.
And in all of that, doesn't trust become even more important, especially in those remote and hybrid situations?
100%. When you don't have that traditional, manager looking over your shoulder, companies have to trust their teams to actually get the work done, manage their time effectively. And on the flip side, employees need to trust that their employers will give them the support and resources they need to succeed.
It's like a two-way street,
Mhm.
So it's not just about clocking in and out anymore. It's about actually delivering results.
You got it. It's a shift from focusing on just the hours put in to the actual outcomes. That's a big change for a lot of organizations.
So for those of us who are working remotely, and there are a lot of us these days, self-management, that's like the key, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But man, the distractions at home, oh my goodness.
It's tough, you're telling me. I mean, that line between work and personal life, it gets blurry so easily.
It does.
One thing that really stood out in our source material was this idea about focusing on identity-based habits. It was in that Atomic Habits book, remember?
I do, yeah.
It's not just about saying, okay, I will work without distractions. It's about shifting your mindset to, I am a focused professional who works from home.
That is interesting. I never thought about it that way. Like changing how you see yourself can change how you act.
That's exactly it.
Wow.
And it can be a powerful tool for managing those distractions.
Okay, that's something I'm going to try. And what about practical things like setting up a workspace? I mean, even if it's just a corner of a room, does that help?
It does. It really does. Having that designated space, it's like telling your brain, okay, this is where we work. And that mental separation is so important.
Makes sense.
And having a morning routine, even if it's small, it can be huge for getting into that work mode.
Yeah, it's like signaling that shift.
Exactly. Signals are key. And another thing, timers. I know it sounds simple, but setting timers for tasks can make a big difference.
Yeah, like little bursts of focused work.
Right. It brings structure and a sense of urgency to your day. And let's be real, structure is something we often lack when we're working from home.
It is. And you know what else really resonated with me? The importance of taking breaks. It's so easy to feel like you have to be on all the time when you're working from home.
I know, right? The guilt is real.
But the source material, it was saying that stepping away can actually make you more productive.
Absolutely. It's about working smarter, not harder. And sometimes stepping away for a bit, it can actually recharge your focus, even boost your creativity.
Because our brains aren't meant to just go, go, go all the time, right?
Exactly. We're not machines. Our mental energy, it's like a resource that needs to be managed and replenished, just like a muscle.
Okay, so We've talked about how work is changing, where we do it and how we do it. But then there's the next piece of the puzzle.
Hmm.
How do we keep our careers moving forward in this new world without, burning ourselves out in the process?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? We've covered the where and the how of work, but now it's like, how do we actually grow in our careers without getting totally fried? The source we were looking at, it really emphasized setting clear goals, like not just vague ideas, but actually specific, actionable goals, and then tracking your progress.
I can see how that would help because then you're not just wandering aimlessly,
Yeah.
right? You have a direction.
Exactly. And it gives you that sense of accomplishment, too. You can see yourself moving forward, which is super motivating.
And something they talked about was celebrating those little wins. It's easy to get so focused on the big, the UGE milestones that we forget to appreciate the progress we make every day.
Oh, totally. Those small victories, they're so important. It's like career growth. It's rarely this huge leap. It's more often like a series of small steps, consistent effort over time. Recognizing and celebrating those small wins, it keeps you going. It builds momentum.
I like that. Small wins, big momentum. And what about learning? I mean, it seems like no matter where you are in your career, you always have to be learning new things.
Absolutely. You can't just rest on your laurels,
Yeah.
This whole work landscape, it's changing constantly. Continuous learning, it's not optional anymore, it's essential. And it doesn't always have to be, some big formal training program.
Right. It could be just reading an article or listening to a podcast.
That's it. Or taking a short online course. It's about staying curious, staying open to new ideas.
So it's not always about these big dramatic career changes,
Not
right?
at all. Sometimes the biggest growth comes from just getting really, really good at what you already do.
Like becoming a master of your craft.
Exactly. That's valuable. And, there's so much pressure in our culture to always be climbing the ladder. But sometimes deepening your expertise right where you are, that's a huge accomplishment. It makes you invaluable.
I love that. So we've covered work, but what about personal development? It seems like that goes hand in hand with our professional lives, right?
It really does. It's like the foundation. Personal growth gives you the strength and the resilience to handle the challenges that come with, building a career and just navigating life in general. And in the source material we were looking at, they described it as a journey, which I think is really fitting. It's this ongoing process of learning and evolving, and it requires being open to change, trying new things.
Yeah, and it mentioned using resources like books, which I know a lot of people find helpful.
Me too. Books are amazing. They can give you frameworks, insights, new perspectives, and sometimes they challenge your assumptions. They can be really inspiring.
They can be. And one thing that resonated with me was this idea of setting personal challenges, like pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, both in your work life and in your personal life.
That's so important because when you push your boundaries in any area of life, it makes you more resilient, more adaptable. You learn what you're capable of. You might even discover talents you didn't know you had.
And they specifically talked about two books, Atomic Habits and The Power of Now.
Oh, yeah. Those are great. They're very different, but they complement each other really well.
In one way.
Well, Atomic Habits, like we touched on earlier, it's all about creating those small, consistent habits that lead to big changes over time. It's very practical.
I like practical.
Right. And then The Power of Now, it's more about mindfulness, about being present in this moment. Our world is so fast-paced, so distracting, and this book gives you tools to calm your mind, reduce anxiety, and just see things more clearly.
That mindfulness piece really speaks to me, especially because we're constantly bombarded with information these days. Like our attention is pulled in a million directions.
It is, it's exhausting. But mindfulness, it's like hitting the reset button. It helps you focus, make better decisions, both at work and in your personal life.
So that brings us to, I think, a really important concept, the growth mindset. It seems like that's the fuel for both career and personal development.
It is. It totally is. A growth mindset, it's the belief that you can always learn and grow, that your abilities aren't fixed. You're not limited by what you know now.
So it's the opposite of like, oh, I'm just not good at math or I'm not a creative person.
Exactly. It's about believing that you can develop your skills, your talents, your intelligence through effort and dedication. And the good news is it's not something you're born with. You can cultivate a growth mindset. It just takes practice.
And part of that seems to be how we view failure. It's like we have to shift from being afraid of it to seeing it as a learning opportunity.
That's a huge shift, but it's so important. A growth mindset sees failure as feedback. It's like, okay, that didn't work, so what can I learn from it? How can I adjust my approach? There's this great concept called failing forward. It's about embracing those setbacks, knowing that they're part of the process, and using them to move yourself forward.
So it's like failure isn't the end, it's just part of the journey.
Exactly. And it makes you more resilient, too.
Okay, so we've talked about it a lot, but we can't ignore the elephant in the room. Technology
Yeah.
is changing everything so rapidly. What do you think the next 5 to 10 years will hold for us in terms of how we work?
Well, AI, artificial intelligence, is going to be huge. It's already being integrated into so many aspects of work, and it's only going to get more sophisticated. Like, think about AI tools that can analyze tons of data and identify market trends.
Wow, it's like taking over a lot of what humans do now, right?
It is, and that means human analysts can focus on the bigger picture, the strategy, instead of getting bogged down in the data.
So it's like AI is enhancing our capabilities, not necessarily replacing us.
Exactly. But with all this technology, I think we're going to have to be really intentional about how we use it and how we protect our time and our well-being.
Because it's so easy to get sucked in,
Yeah.
right? It's like always being on.
It is. So finding that balance, being mindful of our technology use, that's going to be key. We have to protect those human connections, make sure we're not letting technology overwhelm our lives.
And I think that's what really stood out in our discussion, that even with all these advances, the human element, it's still essential.
Oh, absolutely. Technology can automate tasks and make things more efficient, but it can't replace things like critical thinking, creativity, empathy, those uniquely human skills.
Right, and those are the skills that are going to be even more valuable in the future, right?
Totally. Because at the end of the day, it's about connecting with people, understanding complex situations, thinking outside the box. Those are the things that set us apart.
So it's not about technology taking over. It's about finding that sweet spot where technology enhances our abilities and gives us more freedom, but we don't lose our humanity in the process.
That's it. That's the goal. It's about technology serving us, not the other way around.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it's clear that how we work, how our careers grow, and how we develop ourselves, it's all connected. And it's all happening against this backdrop of incredible technological change. We really hope you've gotten some valuable insights from this, some things you can apply to your own journey, both professionally and personally.
We do. And as you move forward, think about how these trends and ideas connect with your own experience.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of our listeners are probably thinking about this stuff already in their own lives.
Yeah,
Whether it's, at work or in their personal lives.
absolutely.
So what we want to do is sort of take Sarah and John's conversation and really try to pull out some really useful stuff that you can actually use.
Yeah, what jumped out at me right away just looking at it is that no matter what you're working on right now, like whether it's you're trying to get a promotion or you're learning something new,
Right.
even just trying to kind of feel more balanced day to day, all of these things are just so fundamental. Like
Yeah.
you need self-motivation, you need to know how to get through those rough patches.
Oh, yeah.
And having people you can learn from.
Right.
And then just that whole thing of how do you deal when things get turned upside down.
Totally.
So I think Sarah and John have really laid out some great practical stuff here,
Yeah.
and we can kind of dig in and see what we can pull out of it.
Okay, let's start with self-motivation because John kicks things off by talking about remembering your why,
Yeah.
like that bigger goal when you're kind of stuck in the everyday stuff.
Yeah.
Does that resonate with you at all?
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Yeah.
I think everyone has that experience where you're just going through the motions
Totally.
and you've kind of lost touch with that initial spark.
Right. Like, what was I even trying to do here?
Exactly. So connecting back to that bigger purpose can be so grounding. And, a really simple exercise is just to ask yourself, okay, what impact was I hoping to make? Or what values does this actually connect to?
Right.
And just writing that down can be really powerful.
And then John talks about breaking down those big goals into smaller pieces.
Yes. Why do you think that is so effective?
I think because it makes it seem less overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like instead of this huge thing looming over you,
Right.
it's like, okay, I could just focus on getting to that next point.
That next step.
Yeah, and you get that little sense of accomplishment.
Totally.
Oh, which, by the way, both Sarah and John talked about celebrating those small wins.
Yes. Such a good point, because it's more than just feeling good in the moment. It's like you're training your brain to actually recognize your own progress.
Right.
So how can you make that more concrete, beyond just kind of mentally acknowledging it?
Right.
Could you share it with someone?
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe take a minute to really appreciate how far you've come?
Or even, like Sarah said, writing those wins down so you can actually see them.
Oh, that's so smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's be honest. Motivation isn't something that just stays high all the time.
No way.
What happens when it dips?
Right.
Sarah talked about taking a step back, resting, and on not seeing that as failure.
Mm-hmm. That's so important because I think we have this tendency to just push through even when we're exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
But what Sarah is saying is that rest is actually essential for staying productive.
Yeah.
It's about listening to your body and mind, and then she brings up your support system.
All right. Like, who are the people that can help you when you're feeling stuck?
Yeah, because just talking it out, getting a new perspective can be huge.
Absolutely.
And then John added something really interesting about changing your environment.
Have you found that that actually makes a difference?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, sometimes all it takes is a walk outside or even just moving to a different room just to kind of shift your energy.
Yeah. So it's like all these things together, right? Remembering your why, breaking things down, celebrating those small wins, knowing when to rest and who to reach out to, and then maybe just changing your scenery a bit.
It's like you're managing your internal world and your external world.
Yeah, to kind of keep things moving forward.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about overcoming challenges, because John starts off by mentioning resilience.
Yeah.
And he has this idea of focusing on what you can control when things feel crazy, which I think is so hard when you're in the middle of it.
It is so hard because I think our natural instinct when things go wrong is to fixate on all the things we can't control.
Totally.
Yeah, all the external factors. But what John is saying is if you can zero in on the things you can actually do something about,
Right.
your response, your effort, even just your attitude, that's where you regain that sense of power.
Yeah, instead of feeling like a victim.
Exactly.
And then he talks about seeing challenges as opportunities for growth.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's not always easy to see it that way when you're in it.
No.
But if you can kind of train yourself to look for the lessons, it can really change your whole experience.
It really can.
Sarah also had this really practical take on problem solving.
Yeah.
You know, breaking the challenge down and then just taking action, even a small step.
Yeah, that reminds us that overcoming challenges is not about waiting for things to change. It's about doing something.
Right.
Even a tiny step can create momentum.
Yeah.
And it often reveals solutions you couldn't see before. And then John brought up asking for help, which, why do you think people struggle with that so much?
I think there's this idea that it's like a weakness or something.
Yeah, like you're admitting you can't handle it yourself.
Yeah, but John frames it as a strength.
Right.
Like it's a way to access knowledge that you don't have.
Exactly. It's about understanding that you don't have to have all the answers. And in fact, getting different perspectives is a huge advantage.
And this leads perfectly into mentorship, which both Sarah and John clearly value a lot.
Oh, for sure.
John calls it one of the most powerful ways to deal with those tough situations.
And it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You're learning from someone who's been there, who's already navigated something similar.
Right.
So they can offer insights based on their own experiences.
Yeah, and Sarah emphasizes how mentorship can really speed up your growth.
Because you're not making the same mistakes they did.
Right. You're benefiting from their wisdom.
Yeah.
And John gives that great example of his mentor teaching him patience
Oh, yeah.
and to trust the process, which sometimes the most important lessons aren't about, like, concrete skills.
Totally. It's about mindset.
Exactly.
And Sarah's mentor taught her about balance.
Right. Not just work-life balance, but also balancing ambition with taking care of yourself.
Huge.
Yeah, that sustainable success isn't just about pushing harder. It's also about making sure you're taking care of yourself.
It's both.
Yeah. And they both made the point that you can learn from anyone, not just people in your exact field.
Right, which really expands our idea of who a mentor can be.
Yeah, it's about finding people whose values and experiences resonate with you.
Yeah, exactly. And those mentors, they can offer completely different perspectives.
Right, and push you to be better.
Totally.
Okay, let's shift gears to navigating change, because Jill acknowledges that it can be really scary.
Oh, for sure.
And he starts off by saying to embrace it with curiosity, to see it as a chance to learn new things.
That's interesting because curiosity kind of takes the fear away a little bit.
Yeah, if you can see it as an opportunity to learn, then it's not as intimidating.
Right, and then he talks about leaning into change instead of resisting it.
What does that even look like?
I think it's about accepting that change is often going to happen whether you like it or not, and then actively figuring out how to adapt and even thrive within those new circumstances.
Instead of just fighting it.
Exactly. And Sarah adds this really important layer of staying true to your values.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah,
Like having that as your anchor.
exactly, while still being open to new things.
Right, it's a balance.
It is.
And then John talks about being adaptable and staying positive,
Yeah.
which Why is positivity so important when things are changing around you?
I think because it helps you see possibilities and solutions.
Right.
If you're totally overwhelmed by negativity, you're going to miss those things.
Yeah. And Sarah's final point really sums it up. She says that how you respond to change is ultimately what makes all the difference.
It's about recognizing that you have power even when things feel out of control.
Right.
The change itself might be out of your hands, but your reaction is up to you.
Okay, so stepping back for a minute, we've gone through Sarah and John's conversation, and I think we found some really solid takeaways.
Yeah,
We
definitely.
talked about self-motivation,
Yeah.
understanding your why, breaking things down, celebrating the wins, and knowing when to rest.
Mm.
We looked at overcoming challenges by focusing on what you can control,
Mm-hmm.
seeing those challenges as opportunities, and knowing that it's okay to ask for help.
Right.
And then the importance of finding mentors, people who can offer guidance and new ways of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, navigating change by being curious, staying grounded in your values, and cultivating a positive, adaptable mindset.
And when you put all those pieces together, it really paints a picture of someone who's actively involved in their own growth. It's about building that inner strength and being open to learning from others and facing those inevitable changes with resilience, right? The conversation really honed in on this idea that when you've got a workplace built on trust, where everyone can speak openly, it's not just about keeping employees happy, it's like the core of what makes a company actually productive, you know? Have you seen that play out?
It makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
When people feel safe, valued, not just like a cog in the machine, but as individuals,
Mm-hmm.
they're more likely to really contribute, to share those innovative ideas, to collaborate without holding back.
It's about creating that environment of psychological safety.
Exactly.
And there was this point about employees feeling valued as people, not just for their job title, for who they are.
Absolutely. Recognizing that people have lives outside of work, it creates a stronger sense of loyalty.
Makes you want to go that extra mile, right?
It does.
Like they're invested in you.
It's about belonging.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of leads into another shift that came up. This increasing need for flexibility, especially with so many people working remotely now.
Oh, absolutely.
The conversation really focused on how giving employees some control over their schedules can lead to, that work-life balance everyone's chasing.
It's reshaping the way we view work.
Mm-hmm.
Technology has made it possible for a lot of jobs to be done from anywhere. And that offers more freedom, more autonomy.
It challenges that old way of thinking, like being productive means sitting at a desk for a set number of hours.
Right now, it's more about the results you produce and how effectively you communicate, regardless of when or where you're working.
It puts more emphasis on things like self-management and clear communication.
It does.
So how have you seen that change the way we approach our work days?
I think it forces us to reevaluate what productivity really means.
Right.
When you're not tied to the clock in the same way, it becomes more about setting clear objectives, being transparent in your communication, and having a culture of accountability.
And there was that idea of working smarter, not harder, which makes so much sense in the context of remote work.
It's about being intentional with your time and energy, prioritizing tasks that have the biggest impact.
So how can someone actually put that into practice?
Well, it starts with identifying those distractions that are eating up your time, whether you're at home or in the office.
Right.
Then you can start to prioritize, use technology to streamline things, figure out when you're most productive, and capitalize on that.
It's optimizing your workflow, making each effort count. Now, switching gears a bit, something I always find fascinating is the role of creativity in business. It's often seen as just for artistic fields, but the conversation really highlighted how it's the foundation of innovation in any sector.
Oh, absolutely.
Why is that so vital even in industries that aren't traditionally thought of as creative?
It's about problem solving, finding new and better ways to do things, even in the most everyday tasks.
So it's not just about coming up with a completely new product or service.
Right. It's also about improving existing processes,
Yeah.
making teamwork more efficient, even connecting with customers in a more engaging way.
It's looking at the familiar with a fresh perspective, finding those opportunities to innovate.
Absolutely. I've seen it firsthand in my own field where we deal with a lot of complex data. Sometimes it's about creatively combining existing tools or reframing a problem in a new way.
So it's not always about inventing something entirely new, but finding those unexpected solutions within a given framework. Now, one of the challenges that was brought up is getting businesses to truly embrace this broader view of creativity,
Oh, definitely.
especially in those high-pressure environments where sticking to the tried and true feels safer.
There's the fear of the unknown, of course.
Of course.
But if you're not open to new ideas, you risk falling behind.
You have to be willing to experiment, to view failures as learning opportunities.
It's about creating a culture that encourages creative thinking.
And that idea of thinking outside the box, leading to those breakthrough moments, even in the most structured environments, it's so powerful.
I think a lot of the biggest advancements throughout history came from people who questioned the status quo.
They were willing to explore those unconventional paths.
Exactly.
And the conversation emphasized how important it is for leaders to create those safe spaces where employees feel comfortable sharing even the wildest ideas.
A rigid environment can really stifle innovation.
So how can leaders actually foster that kind of open culture?
They need to actively solicit ideas from everyone. Make it clear that all contributions are valued.
Right. Show that it's okay to take those creative risks.
They need to create a culture where ideas are discussed respectfully, without fear of judgment or ridicule.
It's about making people feel comfortable bringing their whole selves to the table.
Exactly.
And that leads to the idea that the best solutions can often come from the most unexpected places.
When you tap into the collective creativity of an entire team, you unleash so much potential.
Shifting gears again, we come to technology, which has become such a dominant force, not just in our work lives, but in our personal lives as well.
It's truly woven into the fabric of our daily routines.
And the conversation really explored that duality, that double-edged sword of technology.
Yeah, there's the incredible convenience of it, the way it connects us and gives us access to so much information.
But there's also that potential for over-reliance, that feeling of detachment from the real world.
Absolutely.
So finding that balance is crucial.
It is.
The speakers shared some of their own strategies for setting boundaries, for preventing technology from taking over their personal time.
Being intentional is key.
Have you found any particular approaches helpful in your own life?
Creating those tech-free zones and times, especially around meals or before bed, has been really helpful for me.
To kind of disconnect and be present in the moment.
Right.
Turning off those non-essential notifications has made a huge difference too, just reducing that constant stream of distractions.
It's about taking back control of your attention, making technology work for you, not the other way around.
And there's the idea of those digital detox days where you make a conscious effort to disconnect from technology entirely for a set period of time.
It allows you to step back from the digital world and reconnect with yourself and your surroundings.
Right. Recharge and gain some perspective.
Exactly.
The underlying message seems to be about using technology mindfully as a tool to enhance our lives, not control them.
It's about making conscious choices, being aware of how and why you're using technology.
Right, not letting it dictate your time or overshadow those important real-world connections.
Exactly.
It all comes back to finding that balance, ensuring technology enriches our lives without diminishing our well-being or our relationships.
It's a powerful tool, but like any tool, its impact depends on how we use it.
Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, the conversation shifted to strategies for achieving long-term success in a world that's constantly changing.
This is where everything we've talked about really comes together.
It's about how those different aspects of our lives, our work culture, our creativity, our relationship with technology, all influence our ability to thrive over the long term.
Exactly.
And two key elements were immediately emphasized: consistency and adaptability.
That combination is crucial for navigating the ups and downs, the inevitable changes.
It's about being flexible enough to adapt while maintaining that steady effort over time.
And that brings up the idea of defining success on your own terms, because it means something different to everyone.
Right. What does long-term success look like to you?
For me, it's about continuous growth, both professionally and personally, contributing something meaningful while maintaining a sense of balance and well-being.
It's not just about reaching a specific destination.
It's about enjoying the journey.
The conversation also underscored the importance of resilience, of bouncing back from those inevitable setbacks.
That's what allows you to learn from your mistakes and keep moving forward.
The commitment to lifelong learning was another key theme, that constant drive to expand your knowledge and
You
skills.
have to stay curious, keep evolving.
And the value of surrounding yourself with people who inspire and challenge you, who help you grow.
The people you surround yourself with have a huge impact on your journey.
And finally, that vital element of passion, that sense of purpose that fuels your efforts.
Passion provides the motivation to keep going, even when things get tough.
It makes the journey more rewarding, regardless of the outcome.
It does.
The conversation ended with a really insightful point: the importance of finding joy in the process, not just focusing on the end goal.
If you're only focused on the destination, you miss out on all the...
And do their absolute best work.
That's such a powerful shift in perspective. It's not about barking orders or micromanaging. It's about creating an environment where people can excel.
Yeah, and he gave a great example about how a leader's empathy during a team member's personal crisis ended up not only helping that individual, but actually strengthening the bonds within the whole team.
Leading by example was another big one, right? People really watch what their leaders do, not just what they say.
Absolutely. If a leader shows up with dedication and works hard, it inspires others to do the same.
Makes sense. And active listening, was that something John talked about too? Because that seems so crucial for building trust.
Oh, for sure. Both John and Sarah highlighted how important trust is in any leadership role. Without it, you're going nowhere.
And active listening is all about really tuning in to what people are saying, not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Yeah,
Picking up on those nonverbal cues too. Right?
exactly. It's about making people feel truly heard and understood. And when people feel valued, trust naturally grows.
So we've talked about the positive qualities, but what about the mistakes leaders make? John got into that too, didn't he?
Yep, and one of the biggest ones he pointed to was micromanaging.
Ugh. I think we've all experienced that at some point. What did he say about that?
He explained that micromanaging often comes from a lack of trust in a team's abilities. It can really stifle creativity and make people feel like they're not valued for their skills.
It can be so demotivating. You're constantly second-guessing yourself and not able to take ownership of your work.
Right, and he had the story about a leader who would hover over every single task, constantly checking in on their team. The team ended up being afraid to take initiative, and their productivity actually plummeted.
The opposite of what that leader was probably hoping for. Was there anything else John mentioned as a common leadership pitfall?
Yeah, he said that not giving enough feedback is a huge problem, both the positive kind to reinforce what's working well, but also constructive criticism to help people grow.
Makes sense. If people don't know how they're doing, how can they improve or feel appreciated for their contributions? It's like wandering around in the dark.
And Sarah made a really interesting point about the challenge of finding that sweet spot between giving people freedom to do their work and offering the guidance they need to succeed.
That balance. I can see how that could be tricky.
Totally. And she tied it back to that idea of empathy, knowing your team well enough to understand when to step back and let them shine and when to offer more support. It's a real art.
So what I'm hearing is that good leadership is about recognizing that everyone's different and there's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Precisely. And when leaders get that right, it creates what John calls a win-win scenario. Everyone benefits. The team feels valued, their work gets better, and the whole organization thrives.
It's like a positive feedback loop. So we've covered the foundations of leadership, but let's face it, challenges are a part of life, especially in the workplace.
Definitely. Sarah brought that up in the conversation, didn't she? She acknowledged that challenges are inevitable and kind of set the stage for that part of the discussion.
She did.
Yeah.
And John had a really interesting take on how to deal with them.
Yeah, he's all about breaking them down. So instead of getting overwhelmed by a huge problem, you look for those smaller, manageable pieces you can tackle one by one.
That feels so much less daunting, right? It's like climbing a mountain one step at a time instead of trying to leap to the top.
Exactly. He also stressed the importance of staying calm under pressure. Easier said than done sometimes, but it's so crucial.
It is. When you panic, you're not thinking clearly, and it's harder to come up with effective solutions. John's very much about being solution-focused.
He is, and he's also a big believer in collaboration. Don't be afraid to ask for help when you're stuck. He's found that often someone else on your team might have just the experience or perspective you need to overcome a challenge.
That's such a good reminder. We don't have to have all the answers ourselves. Sometimes the best solution is to reach out and tap into the collective wisdom of the group.
And Sarah chimed in with a really important point about flexibility, because things don't always go according to plan, right?
Oh, never. That's life, isn't it?
Right. Being able to adapt and adjust your approach when unexpected challenges pop up is so important.
It's like being able to dance with the unexpected. And I loved Sarah's tip about reconnecting with your initial motivation when things get tough.
Oh, that's a good one. Sometimes you just need to remind yourself why you started on this path in the first place. It can give you that boost of energy and resilience to push through.
Like tapping into your inner reserve of strength. Okay, let's shift gears a bit now to something that's super important but not always talked about enough.
Hmm.
Mental health in the workplace.
Right. Both Sarah and John talked about how much progress has been made in raising awareness around mental health, but that there's still a long way to go.
Absolutely. And Sarah made a really important point about remembering that employees are whole people with lives outside of work.
It's not like you can just check your personal life at the door when you clock in, right?
Exactly. Everyone's dealing with things. And those things can impact their mental well-being, which then affects how they show up at work.
And she really stressed the need to create a safe environment where people feel comfortable talking about mental health challenges, whether it's with their manager, HR, or even just a trusted colleague.
That psychological safety is so crucial. No one should feel like they have to suffer in silence or worry about being judged for struggling.
And John echoed that. He talked about how important it is for leaders to foster a culture of support and understanding. They need to be attuned to their team's well-being and encourage open conversations about mental health without any stigma attached.
It's got to be a two-way street, though, right? Employees also need to feel empowered to reach out for help when they need it.
Totally. And John didn't shy away from the consequences for companies that ignore mental health. He pointed out that they risk losing valuable talent, seeing decreased engagement and productivity, and even damaging their reputation.
It's not just the right thing to do from an ethical standpoint, it also makes good business sense. Sarah had some good suggestions for how companies can better support their employees, didn't she?
Yeah, she talked about the importance of offering concrete resources like access to counseling services and mental health training for both employees and managers.
And incorporating mental health days into their leave policies.
Right. These are things that used to be seen as perks, but now they're becoming recognized as essential parts of a healthy work environment.
It's about creating that culture of well-being that John and Sarah were both advocating for. A culture where people feel truly heard, supported, and valued for their whole selves.
Definitely. And that brings us to the last big theme from their conversation: staying motivated. Sarah kicked this one off by acknowledging that motivation isn't always constant. We all go through ups and downs.
Absolutely. Those moments when you're feeling stuck in a rut or just lacking the drive to get things done, we've all been there.
And John's advice for those times is to focus on the bigger picture. Remind yourself of your goals and why you're doing this in the first place.
It's about connecting back to your purpose, right? Remembering what gets you excited and energized about your work.
Yeah. And he's also a big believer in celebrating even the small wins along the way. Acknowledging those achievements can really boost your momentum and make you feel like you're making progress.
It's like those little bursts of positive reinforcement that keep you going.
Exactly. And Sarah added that it's important to set realistic goals. If you're constantly aiming for something that feels unattainable, you're bound to get discouraged.
Makes sense. Break down those big goals into smaller, more achievable steps. That way, you get those more frequent wins to keep you motivated.
And don't forget about self-compassion. John emphasized that it's okay to have those dips in motivation. Rest and recharge when you need to.
That's so important. Sarah was on the same page with that. Rest and recovery are just as crucial as hard work for maintaining that long-term motivation.
That's all about balance, right? You can't run on empty.
Exactly. And to wrap this up, John made a really good analogy. He said to think of your career as a marathon, not a sprint.
I love that. It takes the pressure off, right? You're in this for the long haul. There will be ups and downs, but you'll get there eventually.
So, to recap everything we've learned from Sarah and John's conversation, good leadership is about trust, empathy, and empowerment. Overcoming challenges is about staying focused, calm, and solution-oriented. Mental health is as important as physical health and deserves just as much attention in the workplace. And right.
It's not like you reach a point and you're done.
No, it's like this constant...
It's ongoing, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what's so important for you, the listener, to grasp is that personal growth, it's not like a trophy you win.
Yeah.
It's this constant process of, discovering and refining who you are.
Right. And Sarah hit the nail on the head when she talks about self-awareness.
Yeah.
That's got to be the starting point, right?
Totally. You can't really figure out where you're going.
Yeah.
If you don't know where you are right now.
Exactly. And it's not always easy.
Oh, no.
Sarah even talks about embracing the discomfort,
Yes.
like pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, which can be,
Uncomfortable, for sure.
yeah, uncomfortable. And then John chimes in, and he's all about being around people who
Oh, yeah.
challenge you,
Absolutely. It's
like, which I think is so interesting.
It's about challenging your perspectives, right? And this is a great question for you, the listener.
Yeah.
Are you actively looking for viewpoints that maybe are different from your own?
Oh, John's point is all about that friction of ideas, being around people who push your thinking
Right.
and help you see things from different angles.
Right.
That's how you learn and grow.
And Sarah builds on that. She talks about having relationships that are both supportive and challenging.
Right.
So you need that balance of people who are there for you,
Yeah.
but also push you to be better.
To hold you accountable,
Yeah.
and keep you motivated.
I think that's something we all need.
And what's interesting here is they're both talking about the role of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a solo journey,
Right.
The people we surround ourselves with, they shape us.
And then John brings up this idea that sometimes like adversity and failures can actually help you grow.
Yeah.
It's like those tough times.
Oh, they're not fun.
No.
But they teach you so much.
Yeah, it's like you learn the most from those.
Exactly. And if you think about resilience, which is your ability to bounce back,
Right.
it's often those setbacks that make you stronger.
So true. So when you're going through those tough times, Sarah talks about having a strong why.
Oh, that's essential.
Yeah, like a purpose that keeps you going.
Absolutely. It's that driving force.
And she also reminds us that progress isn't always a straight line.
Oh, no.
You're going to have ups and downs.
For sure. And that's so important for you to remember,
Yeah.
that expectation of always moving forward.
Right.
It could be discouraging when you hit those bumps.
So having that why helps you through those.
Exactly. It gives you something to hold on to.
And John adds to that. He says progress might not always be visible every day, but it's still happening.
It's trusting the process.
Right, and trusting yourself.
Yeah, you got to believe in yourself even when you don't see the results right away.
So true. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit and
Okay.
talk about career changes.
Big topic.
Huge. And John acknowledges they can be scary,
Oh, yeah.
but they also have so much potential.
The unknown can be exciting.
Right, and Sarah shares her own story about going from a corporate job
To freelancing. And she's really honest about how scary it was at first.
I bet a lot of you listening can relate to that.
Oh, yeah.
It's a big leap going from that structured environment
Yeah.
to being your own boss with all the uncertainty that comes with it.
And John talks about that feeling of uncertainty that comes with any new path.
It's natural to feel that way.
Yeah, you're stepping into the unknown.
Exactly.
But Sarah says what helped her through it was having a clear vision of what she wanted and a willingness to learn new skills.
Right. Being adaptable.
Yes.
And those two go hand in hand.
Yeah.
The vision gives you direction like a compass,
Right.
and adaptability helps you navigate all the unexpected turns.
Totally. And John emphasizes patience
Oh, yeah.
and self-compassion.
It's not going to happen overnight. You
Right.
got to be kind to yourself.
And this is where Sarah's point about the comparison trap comes in.
Oh, the comparison trap. Yes. It's so easy to fall into that.
It is, especially with social media.
Everyone's highlighting their successes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you start to wonder why you're not there yet.
Right. But John's reminder about patience is so important.
Yeah.
You got to manage your expectations and realize that learning takes time.
And Sarah really drives home the point of focusing on your own path
Yes.
and celebrating your own progress.
Absolutely. Every journey is different.
Right.
And it's your unique journey.
So true. Okay, let's move on to work-life balance.
Another big one.
Oh, yeah. John starts off by saying it's a struggle for everyone.
Especially during times of change.
Right, and Sarah talks about her experience with overworking as a freelancer
Yeah.
and how she realized balance isn't just about splitting your time.
It's about priorities,
Right, and setting boundaries.
which can be so hard.
It is.
Setting work hours, actually taking time off.
It sounds simple.
It does. No. And Sarah's experience is a perfect example
Yeah.
of how the lines can get blurred, especially with remote work.
It's so easy for work to just take over.
It is. And that's why those boundaries are so important.
And John has this interesting perspective on balance.
Oh, yeah.
He talks about it being more about managing your energy,
Yes.
not just your time.
It's a different way of looking at it.
And he found that setting a specific work cutoff time was a game changer.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like a signal to your brain to switch off.
And to recharge.
Exactly.
And they both talk about the danger of work creeping into all areas of your life.
Mm-hmm.
especially with remote work.
Right? It's like you're always on.
Yeah, and that leads to burnout.
Absolutely. Which then impacts the quality of your work.
It's a vicious cycle.
It is. And, setting those boundaries.
Yeah.
It's essential for breaking that cycle.
And John brings it back to intentionality.
Oh, yeah, being intentional with your time.
It's not just about having free time.
It's about choosing how you spend it.
And protecting it.
Exactly. Being mindful.
So we've talked about personal growth, career changes, work-life balance.
A lot of good stuff.
Now, how do we navigate all those changes with confidence?
That's the key question.
Right? Sarah talks about embracing uncertainty.
That's huge,
Yeah, and approaching change with curiosity instead of fear.
Being open to the possibilities.
Yes, and trusting in her ability to adapt.
That's a powerful mindset shift.
It is.
Embracing uncertainty, recognizing that life is unpredictable,
Yeah.
and then being curious about what might come next.
Right.
It opens you up to new experiences.
And John reminds us that change is inevitable.
It's going to happen whether we like it or not.
So why not embrace it?
Exactly, and see it as an opportunity to grow.
And he highlights the importance of self-trust.
Believing in yourself.
Yes, knowing you can handle whatever comes your way.
And that self-trust, it's the foundation of resilience.
Which Sarah talks about as being crucial for bouncing back from challenges.
Right, it's that ability to get back up.
Yeah, and keep going.
After you've been knocked down.
And John sums it up beautifully. He says, resilience is about weathering the storms.
Yes.
And coming out stronger.
It's not just surviving, it's growing through the tough times.
So true. Okay, let's wrap this up and give our listeners some key takeaways.
All right, so when it comes to your personal growth,
Yeah.
remember, it's an ongoing process. Start with self-awareness.
Right.
Step outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And surround yourself with people who support and challenge you.
Love it for career changes.
Have a clear vision. Be adaptable.
Right.
Be patient with yourself.
Yes.
And focus on your own journey.
Absolutely. And for work-life balance.
Prioritize your energy.
Yeah.
Set those boundaries.
Protect your time.
And be intentional with how you spend it.
And for navigating change with confidence.
Embrace uncertainty. Trust yourself.
Yes.
And cultivate that resilience.
What I find so interesting is how all these things are connected.
They are intertwined.
Yeah, like your personal growth helps you navigate change.
Right.
Which requires resilience.
And work-life balance supports it all.
It's all part of this big journey.
Exactly.
And as Sarah and John showed us, it's an ongoing journey.
There's no finish line.
And it's the journey that makes us who we are.
So keep learning. Keep believing in yourself.
Yeah.
And embrace the challenges and opportunities that come your way. Like, oh my gosh, my brain is just like a browser with 50 tabs open.
Yeah. Yes.
Always jumping to the next thing or the next worry.
Yeah.
And I remember for me, it wasn't until I actually started trying to cultivate being present more often that a sense of calm really started to settle in.
Yeah. I think that that feeling of a racing mind is something that so many people are struggling with these days. And I think it's really important to point out that that constant chatter can be surprisingly exhausting. And when we talk about mindfulness, it's really about gently directing your attention to what's happening right now. In this moment, it's noticing your thoughts, the sensations in your body, the sounds around you, without getting caught up in judging them.
Right. And I think, when people hear mindfulness, maybe they picture someone sitting in a meditation pose for hours on end. But while formal meditation can be a really powerful tool, mindfulness is really about bringing that focused awareness to everyday moments. So, one of our sources talked about it is really listening when someone is speaking to you, not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Yeah.
Or really noticing the warmth and aroma of your morning coffee. These small, seemingly insignificant things.
Exactly. And, if we connect this to the bigger picture of your well-being, it can actually help to dial down that mental replay of past events and anxieties about the future. And we all know that those can be huge sources of stress.
Right.
If someone is listening and thinking, okay, this mindfulness thing sounds great, but
Yeah.
where do we even begin? What are some really tangible first steps they could take?
Yeah, absolutely. So the material that we looked at suggested starting really small.
Yeah.
I mean, think 5 minutes a day.
Yeah.
You don't have to overhaul your entire routine. Just find a quiet spot, get comfortable, and focus on your breath.
Yeah.
Just notice the feeling of the air coming in.
Yes.
The gentle rise and fall of your chest or abdomen, and your mind's going to wander off.
Of course.
That's totally natural. It does for everyone. But just gently, without judgment, guide your attention back to your breath or any other physical sensations that you happen to be noticing.
Yeah, that gentle redirection is so important because It's not about achieving this like blank mind state.
Right.
It's more about cultivating that awareness of when your attention has drifted.
Yeah.
And, beyond those quiet moments, we can also weave mindfulness into things we're already doing. So one source was talking about mindful walking,
Oh, yeah.
really feeling each step, noticing the movement of your body.
Right.
Another source talked about mindful eating,
Yeah.
paying attention to the tastes, the textures, the smells of your food, really being present with it, free from distractions like your phone or the TV.
Right. Being present with your food.
Yeah, and that can be incredibly grounding.
It can. Yeah. And that kind of naturally leads us, I think, into self-care.
Yes.
And I think self-care sometimes gets this image of, bubble baths and spa treatments, which are lovely if you enjoy them.
Yes.
But self-care in the context of long-term well-being is really about tending to those core physical and emotional needs consistently. It's not an occasional treat.
Exactly.
It's something you build into your life regularly.
Exactly. It's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And this is a good moment to just pause and ask yourself,
Yeah.
are you giving your body the fuel it needs with nutritious food?
Yeah.
Are you prioritizing enough sleep?
Oh, that's a big one.
It is a big one, and it's important because these things are not indulgences. They're the foundation of how you function day to day.
They really are, and our sources emphasize so much those basics, getting adequate rest, eating well, and making time for activities that genuinely help you unwind. And that's different for everybody, whether it's reading a book, spending time in nature, or listening to music, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And one of the things that came up that I think is so powerful and so hard sometimes is setting boundaries.
Yes.
Learning to say no to commitments that will drain you is huge.
It is, and how often do you find yourself saying yes to things out of obligation, even when you're already feeling stretched too thin?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, and
Right.
setting boundaries is about recognizing your limits and consciously protecting your time and energy. And it's about understanding that saying no to one thing is often saying yes to your own well-being.
Yeah.
Self-care is not selfish.
It's not, it's essential.
It's essential. It's what allows you to recharge and show up fully
Right.
in all areas of your life.
And it's so personal too. What really nourishes one person
Yes.
might feel like a chore to another. So whether it's a gentle yoga practice, quiet meditation, connecting with loved ones, or getting lost in a creative hobby, the key is that it's intentional and that you build it into your rhythm
Yes.
regularly. It's not something you reach for when you're already depleted.
Exactly. It's about being proactive.
Yes.
It's about nurturing yourself.
Yes.
And this leads us really well into the area of mental health, which is the bedrock of everything we've been talking about.
Yes, and it's so important to think about mental health, not just as the absence of mental illness, but as this fundamental part of your overall health that requires ongoing attention and care, just like your
Right.
physical well-being.
Exactly. And, one of the most insightful things that I've noticed coming up in these sources is the emphasis on acknowledging all of your feelings.
Yeah, all of them.
All of them. It's about resisting the urge to push away difficult emotions like stress, anxiety, sadness.
Right.
It's about allowing yourself to recognize and feel these emotions without judgment.
Which can be really hard,
It is hard.
because I think our natural inclination is often to either power through or just try to ignore
Yes.
those feelings that we don't like.
Exactly. And you want to just kind of
That
shove
also
them under the
does.
rug.
Right.
But what these sources are suggesting is that simply acknowledging those emotions is a crucial first step.
It is.
And then having some tools and strategies
Yeah.
for coping with those emotions. And that might look like
Right.
spending some time journaling to process your thoughts, reaching out to a trusted friend or family member, or knowing when to seek professional support.
Right. And it's not just about, addressing things when they feel totally overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's about developing this habit of regular self-assessment.
Yeah.
Checking in with yourself, being honest about your emotional state,
Yes.
your needs. Think of it as a regular mental and emotional checkup.
Exactly. And remember, your mental health journey is not going to be a straight line.
It's not.
There will be ups and downs.
Yeah.
And during those more challenging times, practicing self-compassion is absolutely essential.
So important.
Yeah.
We're so quick to criticize ourselves when we're struggling emotionally.
Yes.
And it's worth saying, again, reaching out for professional support is not a sign of weakness.
It's not
It's
right.
an act of strength and self-awareness.
Exactly. It's like going to a doctor
It is.
when you have a physical ailment.
Absolutely. And just as consistent physical activity and healthy eating habits support your physical health, intentionally building positive habits
Yes.
can have a huge impact
That's huge.
on your mental well-being. So things like regular exercise, making sure you're getting enough quality sleep, nourishing your body with wholesome foods,
Yes.
those things have such a direct impact on your mood and overall well-being.
Yeah, they really do. And, when it comes to building those strong habits, what our sources really emphasize the importance of starting small
Yes.
and being consistent.
Yes.
Above all else, it's so tempting to try and overhaul everything at once,
It is. I'm going to become a whole new person.
Yes, and then you burn out and then you just give up.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's really interesting is this idea of focusing on cultivating one new habit at a time until it becomes automatic, until it becomes like second nature.
I love it.
So for example, if you want to incorporate more movement into your day,
Yeah.
maybe you commit to a 15-minute walk.
Right.
3 times a week.
Okay.
Once that feels like a regular part of your routine, then you think about adding in another small habit.
Okay, I love that. And there's this idea that I thought was so fascinating from one of the sources, and they called it habit stacking.
Yes.
Have you heard of this?
Yes.
Okay, so it's this idea of linking a new habit that you want to develop with an existing habit
Yeah.
that you already have.
I love that.
Right. So, for example, you always brew a cup of tea in the afternoon.
Mhm.
Maybe you decide to spend 5 minutes doing some breathing exercises
Yeah.
right after you finish your tea.
I love that.
So you're using this trigger that you already have
Yeah.
to help you remember to do the new habit.
Exactly. It's like piggybacking on an existing behavior.
It is. I love that.
And it makes it so much easier to integrate new habits into your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And then to stay focused, one thing that the sources suggested was setting clear intentions.
Right.
Whether it's for the week ahead or for the month ahead.
Yeah.
And then break down those larger goals into smaller, more manageable steps.
Yeah. So, for example, if your broader goal is to eat more healthily, instead of just saying, I'm going to eat healthy,
Yes.
you could say, okay, I'm going to pack a healthy snack for work 3 days this week. Or I'm going to add 1 extra serving of vegetables to my dinner every night.
Exactly.
Those little things.
Those little things make a big difference. And
Yeah. And you know what I loved about that whole section was they talked about tracking your progress.
yes,
Even those tiny steps could be so motivating.
it is, because it gives you that visual feedback that you're moving forward. And that can be a really powerful motivator.
It can.
And it's also important to remember, as our sources emphasize, that building lasting habits is a journey of progress. It's not this quest for immediate perfection.
It's not.
There will be days when you slip up,
Oh, yeah, of course.
when you miss a workout, or when you
Right.
eat something that's not on your meal plan.
Yeah.
But the key is to not get discouraged by those setbacks, but to gently get back on track as quickly as possible.
Right.
And remember, consistency
Over time.
over the long term.
Yeah.
That's what makes the real difference.
Exactly. And those habits, those small, consistent actions that we weave into our lives
Yeah.
are what really provide that sustained support.
Yeah.
For our well-being, they become the bedrock, not just for achieving our goals, but for living a life that is more balanced, resilient, and ultimately, I think, more fulfilling.
Exactly. So as we bring this deep dive to a close,
Yeah.
let's just kind of recap those key insights for you.
Yeah.
Begin by incorporating small doses of mindfulness and self-care into your day.
Yeah.
Approach your mental health with kindness and compassion.
Yeah.
Acknowledge your feelings,
All of them.
all of them, and seek support when you need it. And remember, cultivate those strong, sustainable habits
Gradually.
gradually, one step at a time.
One step at a time. And you know what it's about? Forward movement, not about achieving some mythical state of flawlessness.
Exactly.
So be kind to yourself
Be kind to yourself.
every step of the way.
Yeah. We encourage you to think about one small actionable step
Yeah.
that you can take today that aligns with one of the areas that we've talked about.
Yes.
So that might be taking 5 minutes
Yeah.
for a mindful breathing exercise. Consciously prioritizing one act of self-care.
Yeah.
Taking a moment to really check in with how you're feeling.
Honestly.
Or identifying.
Or maybe you just want to feel a little more, in control of your day-to-day.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that feeling of, okay, I have these aspirations, but how do I actually bridge that gap and make them happen? So that's exactly what we're diving into today on the deep dive.
I'm excited to dig into this.
We've been going through a ton of fascinating discussions and research all about setting goals, figuring out what really keeps us motivated, how to actually be productive and not just busy, and ultimately how to build that kind of long-term success we all want in our lives.
It's a big topic.
It is. But our mission today is to cut through all the noise and give you some really practical insights. The kind of stuff you can actually start using right now to start closing that gap between where you are and where you want to be.
Love that. Actionable stuff. So let's jump in. Say you're looking at a huge goal. Where do you even begin to tackle it?
That's a great question. And it can feel pretty overwhelming when you're first starting out.
Right.
One of the things that really stuck with me from the material we looked at was the importance of having a clear vision for both your professional life and maybe even more importantly, your personal life.
Yeah, I agree. It's like a compass, that vision.
Yeah.
Because when you can actually articulate what you truly want to experience and achieve in different areas of your life, then you're able to start moving in that direction.
I like the way you put that. It's like having that clarity helps you create a roadmap for yourself. And speaking of roadmaps, one of the things that kept coming up in the research was this idea of breaking down those big, sometimes daunting goals into smaller, more manageable steps.
Ah, yes. It's like reverse engineering your success.
Yeah.
So instead of this massive leap, it's more about taking those small, intentional steps consistently, which, honestly, feels a lot less intimidating, right?
It does. And you know what? It reminded me of the good old SMART framework. That thing everyone talks about in business settings. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Oh yeah, SMART goals, classic.
I know. It sounds a little, well, corporate-y. But as I was reading through everything, it really struck me how powerful this framework can be, even if we just apply it to our personal goals.
Because it forces you to get really specific and intentional about what you want, right?
Exactly. So is your goal specific enough that you know exactly what you're aiming for? Can you actually measure your progress along the way? Is it actually achievable with the resources you have right now, or do you need to figure something else out?
And is it even relevant to your overall values and where you want to go in life?
Yeah, that's such an important point. It's not just about setting any goal. It has to actually align with what truly matters to you. And finally, is it time-bound? Do you have a deadline? Something that creates a sense of urgency and keeps you focused?
It's a checklist, almost. Like making sure your goal has all the right ingredients to actually have a chance of coming to life. Otherwise, it's easy to get stuck in that wishful thinking phase.
Totally. But I think there's something even deeper than just the mechanics of setting SMART goals, right?
Tell me more.
Well, the research we looked at kept emphasizing this idea of identifying your why. So it's not enough to just say, I want to do this. You have to dig a little deeper and ask yourself why you actually want it. What need or desire does it fulfill?
It's about understanding the deeper motivation behind the goal. Tapping into that intrinsic drive that'll keep you going when things get tough.
Yes, because it's not always going to be easy. We all hit those roadblocks and setbacks along the way.
Oh, absolutely. It's like that initial excitement and motivation can only carry you so far. You need something more sustainable to keep you going when things get challenging.
And that's where things get interesting, because one of the key takeaways from the discussions we explored was this idea of shifting our focus from relying solely on motivation to actually building discipline.
Motivation comes and goes, right?
It does. And I think a lot of us fall into this trap of waiting to feel motivated before taking action.
Right. It's easy to wait for that perfect moment or that burst of inspiration. But the truth is, that might not always come.
Exactly. So the shift here is to start thinking about discipline as the real driver of consistent progress. It's that conscious choice to stick to your commitments and your routines, regardless of whether you feel like it in the moment.
Showing up day after day, even when you're not really feeling it. It's those small, consistent actions that really add up over time, especially when you're working towards something big that might take a while to see results.
It's about making those actions a habit, almost. So it's less about relying on willpower and more about creating a system that supports you, even when your motivation dips. Right. And it actually takes some of the pressure off, doesn't it?
It does, because you're not beating yourself up for not feeling super inspired every single day.
Yeah. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, remember how we talked about breaking down those big goals into smaller, more manageable tasks?
Oh yeah, making them less scary?
Exactly. But it's not just about that initial feeling of, okay, I can actually do this. It's also about keeping that sense of progress alive along the way.
Oh, I see what you mean. So every time you check off one of those smaller tasks, you're getting this little boost of accomplishment like, hey, I'm actually moving forward.
Exactly. And those little wins, they create this positive feedback loop that keeps you going.
It's almost like gamifying your goals a bit.
I love that analogy. So, okay, we've got a plan for setting those SMART goals, and we're building that discipline muscle. Now, how do we actually become more productive?
Yeah.
Make the most of our time and energy.
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And the discussions we looked at really emphasized this shift from just doing more to doing the right things.
It's about quality over quantity when it comes to productivity, wouldn't you say?
100%. It's not about being busy just for the sake of it. It's about being intentional with your focus and energy, making sure you're directing them towards the tasks that will actually move the needle on your goals.
Yeah. It's so easy to get caught up in all these little urgent things that pop up throughout the day and lose sight of what really matters.
So true. And that's where things like time blocking can be super helpful. Have you ever tried that?
I have. I've been experimenting with it lately, and it's amazing how much more focused I feel when I actually block out specific chunks of time for specific tasks.
It creates structure and predictability, right? So instead of constantly switching between tasks and getting distracted, you're giving yourself dedicated space to really focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah. It's almost like giving yourself permission to say no to all those distractions that inevitably come up.
And speaking of focus, there's also the Pomodoro technique. Have you heard of that one?
Oh, yeah. The 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off thing.
Exactly. And it's not just some random timing. It's based on this idea that our brains can only really focus effectively for a certain amount of time before needing a break.
It's like a built-in reminder to take care of yourself
Yeah.
and avoid burnout.
Right. And those short breaks aren't just about checking your phone or scrolling through social media. They're about actually stepping away from your work, maybe going for a quick walk, stretching, or just closing your eyes for a few minutes.
To reset and come back refreshed. I like it. Now, there was another concept we came across that I found really intriguing, the power hour.
Ooh, tell me more about that one. I haven't heard of that.
So the idea is to dedicate that first hour of your workday, when you're usually the freshest, to tackling your most important, often most challenging task.
Interesting. So it's about front-loading your day with that high-impact work rather than getting bogged down with all those smaller, less important things that tend to fill up our to-do list.
Precisely. And there's something so empowering about getting that big win early on. It sets a really positive tone for the rest of your day.
I can see how that would create some serious momentum. Now, we can't talk about productivity without mentioning the Eisenhower matrix, can we?
Oh, that's a good one. That's the one where you categorize tasks based on urgency and importance, right?
Yes, and it's such a powerful tool for helping you decide what to focus on. So you have those tasks that are both urgent and important. Those are the ones that need your immediate attention.
And then you have the things that are important but not necessarily urgent. Those are the ones you want to schedule time for to make sure they don't fall through the cracks.
Right. And then you have the urgent but not important tasks. Those are the ones you might want to delegate or find a way to streamline. And then, of course, there are those tasks that are neither urgent nor important. Those are the ones you can probably just let go of entirely.
It's like a filter for your to-do list. It helps you get really clear about what deserves your time and energy. But even with all these amazing tools and techniques, the path to long-term success is rarely a straight line, is it?
Ugh, tell me about it. It's full of twists and turns and unexpected obstacles. Those moments where you feel like you're taking 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. It can be so frustrating.
Oh, yeah. But one of the things that really resonated with me from the research was this idea of reframing setbacks. Instead of seeing them as failures, we need to learn to see them as opportunities for growth.
So it's not about getting discouraged or giving up. It's about asking yourself, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I adjust my approach moving forward? It's that whole growth mindset thing in action.
And it's about being kind to yourself. We all make mistakes. We all hit roadblocks. It's part of the process.
Exactly. And you know what? When you do hit those bumps in the road, it can be super helpful to reconnect with your why. That deeper motivation we talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah. Reminding yourself of the bigger picture and why you set out on this journey in the first place.
Exactly. It can give you that extra boost of determination to keep going. And you know what else? It's not just about individual effort. Sometimes we need a little help along the way.
And that's where having a good support system comes in. Those people who can cheer you on, offer a different perspective, or just listen when you need to vent.
Sometimes just talking things through with someone you trust can make a world of difference. It can help you process those setbacks, gain clarity, and feel less alone in your struggles.
Yeah.
And, on the flip side, don't forget to celebrate those small wins along the way.
Yes. It's so easy to get so focused on the end goal that we forget to acknowledge all those little victories that are happening along the way.
Those small wins are like fuel for the journey. They keep you motivated and remind you that you're making progress. So celebrate those little things. And another thing that can be really helpful is visualization. Have you ever tried that?
I have. I've been playing around with vision boards lately, and it's amazing how powerful it can be to see a visual representation of your goals.
It's almost like bringing them to life, making them feel more tangible and achievable.
Exactly. And it's not just about vision boards. You can also visualize your goals through journaling or even just taking a few minutes each day to close your eyes and imagine yourself achieving them.
It's all about keeping those goals top of mind and reinforcing that commitment to yourself. But ultimately, I think it's important to remember that the journey of working towards a goal is just as important as the destination itself.
Absolutely. It's about who you become along the way. The skills you develop, the lessons you learn, the resilience you build, the growth itself is a reward.
Beautifully said. And I think it's easy to forget that in our culture of achieving and hustling, it's like we're so focused on the end result that we miss out on the beauty and the value of the journey itself.
That's so true. But speaking of hustle, I think it's important to talk about balance, making sure we're not overdoing it and neglecting other important areas of our lives.
Yes, absolutely. Because burnout is a real thing, and sustainable success requires us to take care of ourselves, both physically and mentally.
And balance isn't just about work-life balance, right? It's about making sure we're nurturing all the different aspects of our lives that bring us joy and fulfillment.
Exactly. It's about our relationships, our hobbies, our passions, our health, our mental well-being. All of these things are interconnected and contribute to our overall sense of happiness and well-being. And, as we're striving for those big goals, it's easy to get caught up in the doing and forget to just be.
You're so right. So as we wrap up our deep dive today, what are some key takeaways that our listeners can start applying in their own lives?
Well, first and foremost, remember the power of setting clear, specific, and actionable goals using that SMART framework.
Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Exactly. And then instead of relying on motivation alone, make that conscious choice to cultivate discipline and consistency in your actions.
Because it's those small, consistent steps that add up to big results over time.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to experiment with different productivity techniques. Time blocking, the Pomodoro technique, or even just dedicating that first hour of your day to tackling your most important task. Find what works for you and stick with it.
And remember, celebrate those small wins along the way.
Yes, acknowledge and appreciate the progress you're making. And finally, embrace those setbacks as opportunities for growth and learning. They're not failures, they're simply feedback.
Love that. And remember, it's about progress, not perfection. Be kind to yourself throughout the journey. So with all of that said, what's one thing you, our listener, can do in the next 24 hours to start applying some of these insights?
What small action step can you take that could start shifting your momentum towards your goals? I think hearing from real people is always so helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they've actually tried these things out in their own lives.
Right, it's not just theoretical.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So they're starting off, trying to figure out how to get a grip on their time.
Mm-hmm.
And Sarah mentions that she has this weekly ritual that helps her stay organized.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Planning.
Oh, tell me more.
On Sundays, she sits down
Okay.
and she maps out her week ahead and she creates a to-do list.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, just having that overview,
Yeah.
before you get into the week.
Yeah, it's like setting intentions for the week instead of just kind of, reacting to whatever comes up.
Right, exactly. And she takes it a step further with time blocking.
Oh, yeah, time blocking.
Have you ever tried time blocking?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, cool. So for our listeners out there who maybe haven't or have heard of it but aren't really sure how to apply it, what does that look like?
So, you have your to-do list, and instead of just saying work on presentation,
Right.
you're going to actually block out a specific time in your day or in your week.
Okay.
So, like Tuesday morning from 9 to 11, I'm going to work on the presentation. So it's really about assigning those tasks specific time slots.
Okay. And what does that do for you?
I think it helps prevent that feeling of just constantly switching between tasks,
Yeah.
which can be really draining.
Totally. And I know I've had days where I'm like, what did I even do today? I feel like I was busy all day, but
Yeah.
I can't really say what I got done.
Yeah, and I think time blocking can really help with that because it forces you to confront how you're actually spending your time.
Oh, interesting.
So, it can reveal those hidden time sinks, and it can also highlight, discrepancies between maybe your priorities and how you're actually spending your time.
Right. So if you're saying that family's a priority, but then you look at your time blocks and you're like, oh, wow, I'm actually spending, very little time
Exactly. Yeah.
with my family.
Yeah.
So for someone who is, feeling that lack of control, how would time blocking shift that?
Well, I think by visually mapping out their day, they gain a much clearer picture of, their commitments and their available time. And it's almost like giving your brain a break from constantly trying to juggle everything
Okay.
because you can actually see it, right? And I
Yeah.
think when you have a dedicated slot for a task, you're more likely to actually focus on it and see it through.
Right. You're not going to get distracted
Exactly.
because okay, this is the time for this.
Yes.
And that's it.
Exactly. And I think that can lead to, a greater sense of accomplishment at the end of the day.
Totally. But, okay, let's be real. Even if you have, the best of intentions and you have a beautifully blocked out calendar, distractions are a thing.
They're inevitable.
Yes. And John brings this up in the conversation.
He does, yeah.
What do they suggest we do about distractions?
Well, they both kind of acknowledge that, distractions are just part of life, especially in our, modern work environment.
Right.
But Sarah has a couple of strategies that she uses to really try to minimize those distractions.
Okay. Like what?
So first of all, she makes a conscious effort to turn off notifications.
Ooh, good one.
Yeah. Those, tempting pings from email and social media and messages.
Oh, they're so tempting.
I know. It's like you can't resist.
I know. But, it can really make a big difference in your focus if you can just kind of tune those out.
Right, because it takes you a while to get back to what you were doing.
Exactly.
If you're constantly getting interrupted.
Exactly.
Okay, that's good. What else?
And she also physically removes her phone.
Oh.
Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yeah, I like that.
But one of the things I found really interesting that she does, she keeps a distraction journal.
A distraction journal.
Yeah, have you ever heard of that?
No.
So whenever she has a distracting thought pop into her head
Okay.
while she's trying to focus, instead of, immediately acting on it or letting it kind of spiral,
Yeah.
she just writes it down in a notebook.
Interesting.
So it's like acknowledging the thought without derailing her current task.
I see. So you're not trying to push it away. You're just saying, okay, I hear you.
Exactly. And I'll come back to you later.
Right. But right now, I need to focus on this.
Okay, I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's pretty clever.
And John, on the other hand, uses something called the Pomodoro technique.
Oh, yeah. The Pomodoro technique?
Which sounds very Italian.
It does.
And maybe involves tomatoes.
Maybe.
But it doesn't.
It doesn't, actually.
Okay, so what is the Pomodoro technique?
So as John uses it, it involves working in focused intervals of 25 minutes.
Okay.
And then taking a short break.
Got it.
So usually the break is like 5 minutes.
Okay.
And then after you've done 4 of those cycles,
Okay.
you take a longer break.
Got it.
Maybe 15 or 20 minutes.
Okay, so 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off 4 times, and then a longer break.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. I like it.
And I think what's really helpful about this is that it can make even large tasks feel less intimidating
Okay.
because, you only have to focus intensely for 25
Don't
minutes.
do anything for 25 minutes.
Exactly. And then you get a little break, you can kind of reset
Yeah.
and come back to it feeling refreshed.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, so it's kind of like tricking your brain into focusing by breaking things down into these manageable chunks.
Right, and so then you don't get overwhelmed by like, oh my God, this is going to take me 4 hours.
Right, exactly.
So, okay, I like that. I like that a lot. And they also talk about this thing that I think we all struggle with, which is work-life balance.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Huge.
Mm.
What are their thoughts on this?
Well, I think they both admit that it's an ongoing challenge.
Of course.
It's like a constant juggling act.
Totally.
But John really emphasizes the importance of setting boundaries,
Okay. What kind of boundaries?
particularly around work.
Okay.
So having a specific off-work hour.
I see.
So, after 6 p.m., I'm not checking emails, I'm not responding to messages. That's my time.
Yeah, and that creates that separation, right, between work and personal life.
Exactly.
So that you don't feel like you're just working all the time.
Exactly.
So what's another thing that John talks about?
He also talks about how saying no has been a real game changer for him.
Saying no.
Yeah, to activities that don't align with his priorities.
Oh, that's so hard to do, though.
I know it's really hard.
But I can see how it would make such a big difference.
Yeah, because it's really about protecting your time and your energy, right?
Yeah,
And when you overcommit, you inevitably spread yourself too thin.
totally. And then the things that are really important to you, you end up, not having the time or energy for.
Exactly. And so by consciously choosing what you say yes to,
Right.
you're really shaping your schedule and making sure that you have the time and energy for the things that really matter to you.
I like that. And Sarah talks about protecting her personal time, too.
Yes, she does.
And she kind of views evenings and weekends as sacred,
Yeah, she uses that word sacred.
which I love.
Me too.
But she does say that, she occasionally allows for enjoyable work
Yes.
to kind of bleed into that time.
Yeah.
What's the takeaway there?
Well, I think it's about recognizing that downtime is not a luxury.
Right.
It's a necessity.
Yeah, you need it to recharge
Exactly.
so that you can be productive, when you are working.
Yes, and I think the caveat about the enjoyable work is just acknowledging that sometimes our passions and our work kind of align.
Right.
And it's okay to, do some work on the weekends or in the evenings if you're really enjoying it.
If it doesn't feel like work.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. But it shouldn't become the default.
No, definitely not.
Okay, so John also mentions scheduling personal activities,
Yes, he does.
which sounds so structured.
It does sound a little counterintuitive, right?
Right, because shouldn't personal time be spontaneous?
Well, yeah, spontaneity is great.
Yeah.
But I think the point he's making is that if you don't schedule it in,
Okay.
it might not happen.
Yeah.
How often do we say, oh, I'm going to work out later or I'm going to call my friend later?
And then it's 10 o'clock and you're like, oh, well.
Exactly. And so by putting it in your calendar, you're kind of giving it the same weight as a work appointment or, a doctor's appointment.
Right.
Saying, this is important to me.
I'm going to make time for it.
Exactly. And I think for people who are juggling a lot of different responsibilities.
Like me
Like you.
and probably a lot of our listeners.
Yeah.
It can actually be really liberating to have that structure.
Yeah.
To know, okay, that time is blocked off.
Yes.
It's not going anywhere.
Exactly.
I like that a lot.
Mm.
Okay, so one thing they talk about is how balance doesn't necessarily mean, equal time for everything.
Yeah, that's a really important nuance.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so, we often think of balance as this perfectly balanced scale with equal weights on both sides.
Right, 50-50.
Exactly, 50-50 work-life.
Yeah.
But it's not really like that in reality.
No, because sometimes work is demanding more of you.
Right, exactly. And sometimes your family or your personal well-being needs more attention.
Right.
And so it's really about finding that equilibrium over time.
Okay.
Paying attention to all the different areas of your life.
Yeah.
And finding what works for you.
So it's not about achieving this perfect balance every day.
No, it's more about having that overall sense of balance.
Over time.
Over time, exactly.
I like that.
Because I think that takes the pressure off.
Totally.
Feeling like you have to be perfect all the time.
Exactly. And they also agree that self-care is crucial.
Yes, absolutely.
What are some examples of self-care that they talk about?
So Sarah mentions things like regular exercise,
Okay.
reading for pleasure,
Nice.
journaling to process her thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and even just taking those little moments to disconnect
Right.
throughout the day.
Just to breathe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And John talks about starting his day with a workout,
Okay.
incorporating mindfulness practices,
Like what?
like meditation or deep breathing exercises.
Yeah.
And he also likes to take quiet walks.
I like that.
And he also enjoys cooking and reading.
Nice. So basically doing things that bring you joy
Exactly.
and that help you recharge.
Yes, because when you're taking care of yourself,
Yeah,
you're more likely to be productive and just feel better overall.
totally. But I think we all have those days where no matter how much, self-care you do,
Mm-hmm.
you just feel overwhelmed.
Yes.
What do you do then?
Well, John has a really great piece of advice,
Right.
which is to be kind to yourself.
Oh,
Acknowledge that it's okay to feel overwhelmed,
right.
especially when you're juggling a lot.
We're all human.
We are.
And he suggests asking yourself this question.
Okay.
What can I realistically let go of today?
Ooh, I like that.
Right, because we tend to put so much pressure on ourselves to just do it all
Yeah.
perfectly right now.
And it's not always possible.
Right. And Sarah talks about the concept of mindful productivity.
Oh, yeah, mindful productivity.
What is that?
So when you're feeling overwhelmed, instead of trying to multitask or frantically switch between tasks,
Okay.
mindful productivity is about intentionally focusing on one task at a time
Okay.
and really being present with what you're doing in that moment.
So just being in the moment and focusing on that one thing?
Exactly. And I think that can actually lead to better quality work
Okay.
and a greater sense of accomplishment.
Rather than trying to do 10 things at once
Exactly.
and doing them all poorly.
Yeah, because you're scattered. Your
Yeah.
energy is scattered.
Yeah, so towards the end of their conversation, they revisit the topic of distractions.
They do.
And John shares some specific tools that he uses.
Oh, yeah, like what?
So in addition to, turning off those non-essential notifications,
Right.
he talks about using website blockers.
Oh, yeah. Website blockers are great.
What are those?
So those are apps or browser extensions that can temporarily block your access to distracting websites.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so, if you're working on something that requires deep focus,
Mm-hmm.
you can block Facebook or, whatever your go-to distraction website is
Right.
for a certain period of time.
Ooh, that's smart.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Uh,
What else does he suggest?
He also talks about the 2-minute rule,
The 2-minute rule. Okay.
which is if a task takes less than 2 minutes to complete,
Yeah.
do it immediately.
Oh, I love the 2-minute rule.
Me too.
It's so satisfying.
It is.
Just get those little things off your plate.
Exactly. And it prevents them from piling up and becoming this big, overwhelming thing.
Right. So much better to just tackle them right away.
Exactly.
So it sounds like, the key here is to be proactive about managing distractions.
Yes, definitely.
Rather than just reacting to them as they come up.
Exactly. It's about creating an environment that supports your focus,
I like that.
both externally and internally.
Yeah. Okay. So they actually end their conversation with a really nice list of key takeaways.
They do. It's a good summary.
Do you want to run through those for us?
Sure. So number 1 is plan ahead
Okay.
and utilize tools like time blocking to structure your week.
Got it.
Number 2 is actively minimize distractions
Okay.
by turning off unnecessary notifications and considering using website blockers.
Makes sense.
Number 3 is prioritize and protect your personal time by setting clear boundaries around work.
Yeah.
Number 4 is make self-care a non-negotiable part of your routine
Yeah.
to maintain balance and energy.
Love it. And number 5.
Number 5 is remember to be kind to yourself
Ah.
and recognize that it's okay to let go of less critical tasks when you're feeling overwhelmed.
Such good advice.
Yeah, I think those are really solid tips.
Yeah, really practical and actionable.
Absolutely.
And I think it's a good reminder that finding this balance is a very personal journey.
Yeah.
It's not one size fits all.
Definitely not.
It's about figuring out what works best for you.
Yeah, and being intentional with your time and your energy.
So as you're listening to all this, I want you to think about, what's one small change that you can make this week
Mm-hmm.
to feel a little bit more in control of your time or to carve out a little more space for the things that truly matter to you?
Yeah, that's a great question to reflect on.
Absolutely.
Because even small changes can make a big difference.
Totally. I think that's a great place to leave it.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Until next time.
Bye.